All right. I'm also recording, so that's fine.
Okay.
Let's go into it. All right. Here we go. All right. Welcome to a very special beginning of a series for Muscle Science for Women. You may notice, especially if you're watching this, and if you aren't watching it, you should watch it. Just go on YouTube sometimes. It's fun. I have a awesome co-host with me today who you probably already recognize from being on the podcast before and just for being awesome in general. Beth Lipton, my very good friend and my co-author of Carnivore-ish, which I'm sure we're going to get into over the course of our chats together. But we are here together to talk about fitness and wellness and everything that goes into that through the lens of being a woman who is fortunate enough to be aging and be still here after 30 and beyond. And this is something, Beth, I'd love for you to speak to it too, but this is something that you and I have been talking about for a while. We've always wanted to do some podcasting stuff together more than a one-off thing. And it's something that it sort of just comes up so much, I think, in our personal conversations, because we both work in this space of nutrition and wellness and health. We both love this space personally. I think we got into it because we're just into this stuff. And being women in this industry, it's something that we come up against in pretty much every facet. And being on I don't even know if this is accurate to say, but being on the older side, both of us, of what the sort of avatar of a fitness wellness professional is. And again, I don't even know if that's true. We can dive into that. But I think there's sort of a general feeling that once you're past sort of your 20s and 30s, maybe you're a fitness professional for older women, or maybe you're a specialist in some way or something. But anyway, as we're all aging and we're lucky to do so, but we come up with all kinds of challenges and thoughts and feelings and stuff we want to talk about. And I get so many comments and questions from listeners. Our listeners for this podcast tend to be women, again, generally in their sort of 40s, 50s and beyond, 30s, 40s, 50s. And so I thought it would be nice for you and I to spend some time talking in a recorded capacity about all of these things and what they mean, and try to maybe debunk some myths for people, to educate ourselves and other people, to just sort of have honest conversations about stuff that can be kind of uncomfortable to talk about. And so that's kind of where we are. I've been talking a lot. Is there anything that you want to add to that in terms of sort of introing this series that we're doing?
Yeah, I think you introduced it really beautifully. I think, what you said about not sort of fitting the avatar of what a fitness or health professional looks like at this stage of life is spot on. I mean, I think there's more of it. There's more of a conversation and there's more acceptance of women over, let's say, 35. But I think you're right that we get sort of put into a category of like older
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just being women who are interested in fitness and health.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully we can address some of the changes and some of the differences that just do exist in our bodies as they age, but also maybe break down some of those barriers as well and show that there are similarities as well as differences, that we're dealing with a lot of the same issues we dealt with when we were younger and that your younger listeners are dealing with as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I hope that some younger listeners listen, because it's that whole thing of, if you maybe knew some of this stuff before you were in the middle of it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
think podcasts and one of the very few good things about the internet is that you are able to have access to stuff proactively and not have to wait to make your own mistakes all the time. So I think that's
For sure.
good. And I want to say too, like, in many ways, you and I do still fit the avatar of a fitness person. Like you can make the argument about, we're smaller sized white women, and that's
Mm-hmm.
very much true. And that's, probably a topic for a different series or a different podcast or another thing, because that's a valid conversation to have too. But it is the reality that as we age, and I know it happens for men too, it's just probably a little different and a little less intense, that as
Right.
we
Yeah.
age, yeah, a little less fraught for sure. there are things we have to come to terms with personally and professionally, and how we present ourselves to the outside world and how the outside world perceives us and all of those things. So we're going to talk about, I think today for our first episode, I thought it would be nice to just kind of, I'm not going to say softball, but a topic that we both just love and are so immersed in. Is such a big topic. I think it's nice to like start there and maybe we can drill down as we go. And so this one is going to be just fitness as we age, and talk about sort of all aspects of that. I know we've taken a lot of notes, but I'll just kind of start off by saying, for anybody who's listening and are like, how old are you guys again? Because, listen, we're pretty youthful ladies. And some of that's like the semantics of, what does it even mean to be older than your prime, or what does it mean to be 50 or 60 or whatever? But I'll tell you right off the bat, I just very recently turned 40, and I hate when dumb cliches come true, but this because we spent some time to like in person recently, that there was just something about turning 40 that so many things like came to a head. They just crystallized. They got really real for me. And it's not like I woke up and I was like, okay, well now it's all downhill and I'm achy and nothing's ever going to be good again. Like, it's not that kind of thing. It's just, I really feel, I'm feeling my place in the timeline of life really clearly, I guess, or maybe just intensely. And it's just a number that seems to be more impactful to me emotionally and mentally than any age before it. So I've been like grappling with a lot of things, and I feel the biggest thought is that I feel very fortunate, and also I feel very proud of myself for being at this age and feeling the way I do and knowing what I know about my body and all of these good things. And generally it's a feeling of appreciation and gratitude, but there's also feelings of fear and feelings of what if it's all downhill from here, and feelings of, am I going to wake up and just be achy for the rest of my life and that's it? And then all the hormonal stuff, which is another episode entirely that we'll get into. But just to preface, so if people are like, how old are you? I'm 40 and I feel great, but I also am thinking about my age more than I ever have. And I kind of don't want to. I want to think about it. I want to talk about it. I want to be okay with it. I don't want to like hide it, but I sort of don't like how much it's kind of come up and like hit me in the face. And now I'm like, so anyway, that's my side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. Hopefully if someone thinks I look good, I want them to think I look good, not that I look good for my age.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. I'm 87. No, I'm kidding.
Man, you look good. Period.
I'm 53. And definitely, I would say what you said about turning 40, I felt that way turning 50, definitely. I turned 50 smack in the middle of 2020. So it was not a great moment for anybody. And I didn't really have a lot of bandwidth at that moment to think about it. I was hoping to really celebrate that milestone. I was planning on taking a big trip, and obviously that didn't happen. Hopefully down the road it will, but maybe 55. But yeah, I think any big birthday, any big milestone birthday, especially as a woman, is gonna sort of sock you in the gut a little bit.
Yeah.
I can tell you as someone, older than you, that I hear people talk about being achy all the time, and I just don't feel that way. I mean, do I have aches and pains? Of course, but I don't know if it's that I'm not focused on it and I don't sort of dwell on it, or if I'm actually feeling it less than some of my peers. But I don't think that, a number on the calendar necessarily dooms you to feeling a certain way.
Sure.
Some of it is definitely mindset, but some of it is also just what you do to take care of yourself. And also the privilege of genetics and the privilege of having access to, good care and all of that. So it's not just like, I do all the right things and I feel great. It's also like some of it's just luck of the draw. But I do think that we're not doomed necessarily to feeling crappy after a certain age. I do think that no matter where you are, that there are things you can do to help yourself feel better. And,
Mhm.
you know, as we talk about all the time, most of it is not sexy,
Right. Yeah.
most of it is like doing all the things,
Yeah.
drinking the water and eating well and getting enough rest and, doing, getting a lot of strength training workouts and taking walks. And, it's not sexy, but it is
Mhm.
the stuff that really works. And,
Mhm.
um, I don't know. I think that I don't think we should brush off age and be like age is just a number, but I also don't think we necessarily need to let it define us and where we are in our health journey if we're lucky enough to have all the other things in place.
Mhm. Do you think that before we even really dive into the fitness thing, like one of the aspects of this series is drilling in on aging and wellness for women specifically and how it can be different. And I welcome, we have a lot of male listeners and I appreciate you guys for sticking around because there's a lot you can learn. But this concept of aging being more fraught for women, I would be hard pressed to find somebody who would argue that. Not to say that men don't have to come to terms with things and deal with things, and things change. And when you think about the sort of outdated cliche of like midlife crisis, you usually think of it like a guy buying a convertible or like having an affair or something. So there's stuff with men too, and they have to deal with stuff. But do you think that one of the main sort of drivers of aging being such a more fraught and scary thing for women, one of the kind of original reasons, like I always go back to sort of biology and ancestral health and just ancestry in general, like what's been kind of passed down over generations. Do you think that some of it does have to do with the concept that women tend to have a reproductive expiration date, whereas men don't? And so, because a man can still have babies into their 70s, 80s, I'm looking at you, Robert De Niro and Mick Jagger,
Al
ridiculous, like
Pacino.
30-year-old
Yeah.
kids, whatever.
Yeah.
But because women do have this date where they can no longer do that, that has created the sort of unspoken but very, very overtly perpetuated narrative that when you're sort of getting into your 40s and beyond and you can't have babies anymore, that's why you are quote unquote past your prime. Because if you think about ancestrally, what are we here to do is to have babies. I'm just, I'm making a
Well, no, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you, but there is from that, like looking through that ancestral lens, there is also a theory that, like the grandmother theory,
right.
that women were much more revered kind of hundreds and thousands of years, hundreds of years ago and thousands of years ago, because they played this role of helping the tribe to raise the babies. So
Mm-hmm.
I think what you're talking about is very real, but it's more of a modern phenomenon
Mm-hmm.
where, we don't look like we did when we were in our childbearing years. And the whole sort of like family unit with different generations, that has sort of gone by the wayside, not in all cultures, but in sort of
Mm-hmm.
this culture. And so I feel like we're sort of being shoved out to pasture in a way that we
Mm-hmm.
maybe weren't in the past,
Mm-hmm.
the sort of long ago past. Um, and in terms of like being past our prime, I mean, I was listening to a podcast recently and they were talking about, when Don Lemon said that women are past their
I
prime
saw that.
after their 20s and 30s, and then he sort of snuck in 40s too, and his female co-hosts were like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And what is prime? And I feel like it's a great question, and it's one that we should address, because not necessarily here, but in the course of
Mm-hmm.
this series, because what prime means may mean something different to you than it does to society as a whole, and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately as a person who hopefully plans to have many more years. um, do you really want to, like I'm 53, like let's say I live to be 75. That's a long time to be, past my prime, or to think of myself that way.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm someone, like I have a teenager who's in high school and in a few years is going to move out. And, I feel like that makes me really sad to think about. But at the same time, it's like having that freedom to, live life past the age of like hands-on parenting and, all the sort of doors that opens up. So I feel like, I don't know, prime could mean a lot of different things. And I feel like it's like when people say what the best years of your life is. And I don't think it's one set of years. I think
Yeah.
there's like a best year here and a best year there. And I think the same is true for your prime. Like you're going to have some prime years, hopefully, if you're lucky, at different stages of your life.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. As you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, like what you consider to be prime is changing as the decades go by. Like maybe in your 20s, it is all about like, how much fun can I have and how good can I look, for example. Maybe in your 30s, it's like, how much money can I make? And, can I have this successful family or have some kids or whatever? And maybe, or it's whatever, but it can
Mm-hmm.
change. And I think we have such, we do, there is something. And again, instinctively, biologically, I understand to an extent our drive to retain youth because we do consider at this sort of peak of youth when right as everything has kind of grown to its capacity, but before it starts to slowly degrade, for lack of a better term, because that is something that happens with aging. That is literally what
Of
aging
course.
is. So we'll talk about
Yeah.
that. But when you're right at the top there, at that peak, like maybe your life isn't perfect. Maybe you're young and stupid and making mistakes and don't have any money and don't know what you're going to do with your life. There's all kinds of things that could be like hard during that time. But everyone think has this sort of rosy feel about when I didn't have to try that hard and nothing hurt no matter what I did. And I could make mistakes and kind of get up the next day and brush them off. And everybody universally kind of finds you appealing when you're a certain, like, I don't know, there's just so many things about that sort of peak of youth that I understand why we chase it. But I don't know how unless it's just through, I don't know, acceptance because we have no other choice, or talking about it enough, or I don't know, doing a lot of self-reflection, how we can start to let some of that go without feeling like we're settling into the inevitabilities of aging, And I think like you're a great, I think, example of this as somebody who is so fit and positive and robust and like eager to do new things and try new things and have new experiences all the time. But how we find this balance between, like, I even trying, like, grappling with this, like, fitness wise, where not even because of my age, but having a young child who takes a lot of my energy and, having moved and just kind of being in a slightly different situation, I don't have the desire to do the same kind of fitness stuff that I used to do. And I'm really grappling with it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not only grappling with, well, maybe it's just because I'm like old and tired now. And that part of my life of being super fit is over and I'm mourning it. But I'm also grappling with, who am I if I don't want to do that anymore? Because
Mm-hmm.
so much of my
Yeah.
adult life was really focused on being the fittest, strongest, best looking version of myself. It's kind of stupid even saying it out loud, but I mean, it's what I cared about. It's what I prioritized for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
It might just be a season. I don't mean to interrupt you.
yeah,
I feel like just because you feel that way right now doesn't mean you're always going to feel that way.
I guess.
I mean, there's something very specific about the situation that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, having a toddler, and being the primary caregiver for that toddler, um, you just, as you said, you just moved, you're in a completely different environment. You're not close to your gym the way you were in your old place.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this kind of almost a perfect storm. I don't mean to make it sound negative, but there's kind of like a perfect storm of circumstances that have put you in this place where you're just not feeling the same drive to do the things that you have in the past. And I don't know. I feel like that's going to pass. I feel like at a certain point, you may not have exactly the same goals that you had when you were 29, but I do think it's entirely possible and likely that you will return to your sort of former level of like wanting to challenge yourself fitness wise. And what you do may look different and your goals may look somewhat different, but I don't think it's over just because it's not happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think when you're in it, especially parenting a toddler, it's hard to imagine parenting being anything else. it really is. And then suddenly you wake up one morning and your kid is in second grade and they're in
Self-sufficient.
school all
Yeah.
day, and it just is total. And even when they're home, they don't need you 24/7, and it just looks really different.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's good that you're examining your feelings and that you're kind of like digging into it and dealing with it. But I wouldn't rush to think like that phase of my life is over and sort of
Yeah.
never to return.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That makes me feel better. What are your thoughts on, because going back to this sort of, I feel like a lot of times with women, I'm not saying men don't do this. It's just I'm a woman and I work with women. So this is what I see, that we do kind of like grit our teeth and fight against wanting to, for example, change our diet, change our workouts, change our goals as we enter new decades and new sort of situations in our life. We tend to think like, when I was in my heyday and I crushed CrossFit 6 days a week, or I ran 70 miles a week, or whatever it is, that's what I want to maintain, because that means I'm still young and fit and healthy and doing what I want to do. So do you have some perspective on this? I know you used to be a runner, pretty serious, and you kind of changed that. Like, what are your thoughts on going from 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s and changing your workouts? Do you have to? Should you? How do you, like, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think it's a great question. I think it's sort of the question when we talk
Mm-hmm.
about, getting older and how our bodies change and how our lives change when it comes to fitness. And one thing I notice among my peers is this idea that this thing that I used to do, whatever it is, CrossFit 6 days a week or running marathons or whatever, it used to work for me and it no longer does. So now I have to do it harder and I
Harder.
have to
Yeah.
do more of it. And I feel like I definitely understand that instinct, but I think if you kind of take a step back and look at it, it's like, no, this moment in your life when your body is more tired and you're arguably more stressed, between work and like caring for children and maybe aging parents, and your body is changing, your hormones are changing. Like, it doesn't seem like nature at that moment would be like, no, you need to crush it even harder. Like, that just
Yeah.
doesn't seem like that's the thing that's going to really work for you,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't mean to make it sound like I've got it all figured out, because I definitely don't, and I'm not a fitness expert, but I was really lucky that so I used to be a runner. I ran marathons and half marathons, and I used to strength train like once in a while because I knew I was supposed to, but I didn't really like it. And about 10 years ago, when I changed my diet and became more, I gave up grains and beans and all that, which is a whole other story, which I won't get into. But um, I found that I started to crave weightlifting more, and I started to not really feel like running as much. And over time, it sort of evolved that way. And now most of my workouts are strength training. I walk every day. I walk, around 5 or 6 miles a day, and I take one spinning class a week, which is I think of as like dessert, um, which kind of harkens back to my old running days. But that's pretty much it. And so I was lucky, and I think that's the thing that women that at my stage like should focus on, based on what I read, what the science says. It seems like that's going to be, smart people like Esther Blum talk about this. Like, this is what we're meant to be doing, hormonally, to support our hormones, and to get stronger, to kind of build that body so we don't have sarcopenia and muscle loss and all of that, to fight against the muscle loss that is natural to this age. So I was lucky in that my personal fitness journey kind of brought me that way ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
and that was purely luck of the draw. I can't say that if I was still running hardcore, I would want to do what I'm doing now. And I understand that it's hard to make that transition if it's not what you're doing. But I do talk to a lot of people, friends, and also, people who I meet through my work, who talk about how frustrated they are that they can't lose weight, or how exhausted they feel, or, dragging themselves to classes, or the class is not doing for them what it used to do. And I just feel like, yeah, you're right. It isn't doing what it used to do. And it's maybe not the best thing for you right now. And Nobody wants to be told that, take it, sort of take it down a notch. But I don't think you do actually have to take it down a notch. I think you just have to kind of change your focus and put all that intensity into learning how to lift heavier.
Mm-hmm.
And one more thing I'll say about that is there's a lot of talk on the internet, on Instagram, on TikTok about lifting heavy shit. And I believe in lifting heavy shit. I think it's super important, but that means different things to different people. If you've never picked up a weight before in your life, or you're new to this, then 10 or 15 pounds may feel heavy to you, and that is perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to get away from like, oh, I'm going to lift heavy. That means I have to be an Olympic power lifter tomorrow. Like that's how you get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to sort of like tone down some of the messages that we get from the influencers who are like, you see them and it's really inspiring to see them lifting these massive barbells, but like if
Mm-hmm.
you're a woman and you're 50 and you've just not focused on this before, you've lifted 5-pound weights before, like give yourself some time to build up and get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And it's a good segue into what I was thinking is one of the messages that I give a lot that I want people to really take away from, okay, well, how do I get strong and fit and healthy as I'm older? It's not even so much about, it is about lifting weight. And it's not so much about a very specific type of programming. It's about challenging your muscle appropriately. And again, I'm not here to shit all over running or cardio or anything like that. I just did a 10K. Like I think there are challenges in all of these areas. And if you like doing it, it's great. I think it's paying attention to what your body is actually telling you, paying attention to how it's responding to what you're doing, and then whatever weight bearing exercise you choose to do, it has to be sufficiently challenging. So this is where the folks who are like, I don't want to tone it down and I want to like go all out. This is where this comes in. Yes, you
Mm-hmm.
should, because the other problem is that people say, well, I can get really fit doing Pilates and doing yoga and stuff. And I'm like, again, I'm not an expert in either of those things. Perhaps you can. And there are some Pilates class people assure me are very challenging. And if they are really challenging your muscle and stimulating muscle growth, then that's good. If it just feels hard, like a 20K feels hard because you're running yourself ragged, then that's not good. If
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit just feels hard because you're gasping for breath after 45 minutes of it, that's not the best stimulus. If you go lift weights or you do body weight stuff or plyometric stuff, or maybe some Pilates thing that you feel stimulus in your muscles, that it's tired and you want to go eat some food and rest for a bit and then go for a walk and then 2 days later do it again. And after you've been doing that for 3 to 6 months, you notice you have more muscle and you're stronger, then you're doing it right. But it's less
Mm-hmm.
about sets and reps. It's less about, should I use dumbbells or barbells? Can I use a reformer, or do I have to do stuff in the gym? It's less about those details. It's more about, when you're doing what you're doing, are you targeting and challenging the muscles appropriately? And I've had people, I've had lots of people, because this is another aside, but I'm sure this happens all the time. If you're a chef, you probably have people in your life who try to like explain cooking to you or something. But there's something about, fitness and nutrition. People take it so seriously. And I'm constantly getting told by people in my life, well, but I have a different opinion. I'm like, that's fine, but is that opinion working for you? And I
Mm-hmm.
have lots of people who tell me that, like, protein it just doesn't work for some people the way it might work for you. And I just know weight training doesn't help me lose weight, and the cardio helps me lose weight. And the people who are telling me this are people who have struggled their entire life with
Mm-hmm.
losing weight or gut health issues or body image. And I'm like, how is that working for you? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying across the board Pilates is bad. I'm not saying that eating vegetables and going for a run every once in a while is bad. I'm just saying that if you're so, your personality and your identity is so stuck on this one thing, or you just hate the idea of eating more protein and working out because you don't want to be a meathead or something. There's something that's like not working in your brain. Like we have to dissolve that a little bit and look at it, because if what you're doing isn't working, to your point, doing it harder isn't going to work better. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I went a couple different tangents there, but I will say that like one of the biggest things I wanted people to take away, because they might be listening and saying, yeah, I'm never going to be the person deadlifting in a gym. I'm never going to be the person who's, gets so much protein in their diet, they don't know what to do with themselves. That's fine. But what you're doing in the gym has to have a purpose and an outcome, and it has to be adequately challenging without being destructive,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and that can
Yeah.
happen at all ages. Again, to your point, my mom, this is another funny aside. My mom just started going to the gym. We haven't talked about this offline. But she's turning 70 next year. So she's 69. And in her younger years, she was a fitness person, which again looked very different than the iteration of fitness person that I am. But she probably, I think she did a lot of aerobics and was very skinny, like that was what, but she cared about her fitness and her health in the way that she knew how to do it. And she very much stopped that in the last few decades. She, takes care of herself in other ways, I suppose. And she's a beautiful, amazing woman, but not getting in the gym, not taking care of her like physical structure that way. And she just got a gym membership and she has gone a few times, but what she's doing to you would be a cakewalk. You could do it in your sleep. No problem for me. I'm not following and doing her workout, but it's working for her. She is
Mm-hmm.
feeling the the stress of lifting these muscles and using these muscles in a way that she hasn't before, and she's working up a sweat and she's feeling good about it, not killing herself, not trying to lift some weight that somebody else told her to do. She's doing some exercises that feel challenging to her, and as they start to feel less challenging, she's going to do different ones or go a little heavier or whatever is happening. But it's challenging. So just because you're 69 doesn't mean you shouldn't be challenging yourself in the gym.
Not at all.
Don't pay attention to what other people think should be challenging to you. What is challenging to you? And it's been really fun. Well, anyway, I guess I'm kind of ranting now, but even while I'm talking about having challenges with like feeling unmotivated and not really having a plan for my workouts, one cool thing about having a gym that was shut down for like over a year in the pandemic and then having a kid and all this stuff, like having to kind of start over again, it has been cool to by force not be able to have those ego lifts so much. Like there are still things that I'm good at, but I just, you go back under a barbell and you're like, I have to start all over again. It's been very cool to just throw that all away and go back to the nuts and bolts of like, does this feel challenging to me? Yes, good. It's working. Not, is this 150 pounds? If not, I'm failing. It's really
Mm-hmm.
cool to be able to, if you can, and maybe that's one of the good things that comes with aging, because I wanted to make sure in this talk and in all the talks we have, there's talking about some of the realities and there's talking about some of the good realities too. And I think one of the good things that can come out of aging is maybe being give a little bit less of a shit about what, I don't know, the young people are doing
Absolutely.
or what other people expect of you or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, there were maybe a time 10 years ago that if I came back from an injury and I went to the gym and I was lifting a heavy weight, I'd be like, oh, people are going to think I'm like weak and not that strong. They're like watching me lift this like little baby weight. And now I'm just like, I don't give a shit what anybody in the gym might or might not think. And they probably aren't thinking about it anyway. So I don't care,
Right. Right. You have the
Um,
perspective now to be like, nobody's looking at what I'm lifting.
nobody's looking. And if they are, literally, who cares? I don't know you.
Yeah.
If you think I'm
Yeah.
weak, that doesn't matter to me. I don't know you.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, good for your mom. I think that's great. And anybody listening who has not seen Train with Joan on Instagram,
Yeah.
go look at her. She was just on the cover of Women's Health magazine. She is a
Amazing.
total badass.
Yeah.
She started from, I mean, she is not someone who's been into fitness her whole life. I don't know her. I'm not affiliated with her. I
Yeah.
get no kickback from talking
Yeah.
about her. I'm truly just a fan. But
Yes.
she started in her 60s and she is ripped. She's
Yeah.
so strong.
Yeah.
Um, and she's just a normal woman who is on this journey, and man, she can really lift now. And I have no idea how much weight she lifts, and I honestly couldn't care less. What does it matter? The point is that she has turned her fitness around and she loves it, and she is getting all kinds of attention for it, which is great because she should. And because I hope that it inspires other people.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no age at which it's too late. There just isn't. I mean, something like running, you may not be able to physically get up and run. Like that is something you may not be able to do. But you could be sitting in a chair in your living room, lifting up weights. I mean, you don't have to leave your house. So I feel like anybody, really anybody, can do something weight bearing, um, you know, depending on what's going on with your body, but you can start somewhere. And what is challenging to you may not seem like a lot, but it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. And the nice thing too is you get to see how much stronger you are. I mean, I am nobody's definition of a power lifter by any by any stretch. I mean, probably what I lift is what you would consider a baby weight. I'm fine with that. But I've been using the same person's programs for the last almost 4 years. And when I started, I couldn't lift anything close to what she lifts. And now I'm either where she is or close with a lot of the lifts. And it's taken this long, but it's so gratifying. She's a lot younger than me. She's a fitness professional. I'm not. So, I do get that sense of satisfaction. And you do get that if you stick with it. You may start not lifting, what feels like not lifting very much, and it feels like a challenge. But the next thing you know, before you know it, that first 10-pound weight you started with is going to be too light for you, and you're going to have to move up. And then you're going to have to move up again and again and again. And it's a slow process,
That's
but it's
cool.
really cool to be able to look back on it, especially when you're starting later in life and say, look at me, look what I did. Um,
Should we talk about uh like one of the biggest questions that I get, and this I feel like could be the whole sort of structure of this entire conversation, but I get it over and over and over again, is it actually harder to build muscle after 40? Like if you even start typing that into Google, it's just like pages and pages of stuff and information. And of
mhm.
course, again, there's always the most provocative opinions online. So based on who you're following, based on what your algorithm is sending you, people will either say there's no difference, it's just you being making excuses, or it'll be like, oh yeah, it's infinitely harder and you're screwed if you haven't started in your 20s.
I don't
So
think either one of those things is true. I mean,
absolutely.
I'm not a doctor. I don't have any medical training, but just anecdotally, yes, of course it's harder. But but not impossible.
Yeah.
And, you know, some things are also easier. I mean, some things about having healthy habits become easier the older you get. You know why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not just aesthetics. I mean, at least it isn't for me. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, obviously, like, yeah, I want to have a nice body. I want to have muscles, sure. But also, you don't want to have aches and pains all the time. You want to be able to keep up with your teenage kids. You want to be able to have adventures and do all these things, you know, as you get older.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things at least for me, there's a lot of things motivating me that have nothing to do with the number on a scale or what I look like in a bathing suit.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that makes it easier to get your ass in the gym on the days that you don't feel like it, because it's not just about how you look, it's also about your life, your
Mm-hmm.
quality of life. So that's highly motivating. But the physical part of, is it harder to build muscle? I mean, yeah. So there's things you have to do that maybe you didn't have to do. Like maybe you didn't have to eat as much protein as you do now. I mean, your body doesn't synthesize protein as well as it does when you're younger. So you have to be much more focused on how much protein you eat. Um, and you have to be much more consistent. I mean, I think all of those things are true, but I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I find it easier to just be consistent rather than sort of doing things here and there and hoping I get it done. Um, so, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's just my personality, um, but so yeah, I mean, I do think like objectively it's harder, but I don't know. I don't necessarily, but it's definitely not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm living proof. I'm stronger than I was, 3 years ago, and there's nothing special about me. So
Mm-hmm.
if I can do it, anybody can do it.
I feel like acknowledging that it's harder only its only good purpose is to spur you to educate yourself on why that is, so that you can work around it, overcome it, work through it. Because, and I did some research for this episode and for the work that I'm doing in general, because most of my clients are, late 30s, 40s. And yes, there are a number of reasons why it does get more challenging every following decade. Like what you said about how we sort of we make use of the amino acids in protein less effectively as we get older. So we probably want to be eating relatively more protein as we get older, so that we can get the stuff that we need out of it, because we just don't do that as well as we get older. We also produce less testosterone, both men and women, but it's, I think, a lot more stark for women, and we have so little of it generally anyway, even when we're young. So as we have less testosterone, and we're going to do another episode about hormonal stuff, but like as a lot of these hormones start to lower or bottom out or go crazy, that is absolutely impacting our ability to build muscle on so many different levels. So there's that. And I like what you said too about, yeah, it's a little bit harder, but it's not impossible. And also, that's not a good reason to not try. Like, when other times when it's hard to build muscle, when you have a kid, when you have, I don't know, a busy job, when you travel a lot for work, or you work shift work, or you had an injury, like any of those circumstances, would the people around you say, like, you know what, just don't bother. Like it's so hard now. Just focus on
Or you're not
something
supposed
else.
to do it now. You're not supposed to do it
You're not
now.
supposed
Like,
to. Like, you're not supposed to be
yeah.
trying to build muscle. Come on, you just had an injury or you just had a kid. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, no one tells you that. But for whatever reason, when you're in your 40s and 50s, you're like, maybe you should just, take it a little easier and like just focus on going for walks and keeping your weight down or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
just because it is harder, all the people that we've been referencing that we talk to all the time through the podcast and through our work, who are like, I like to be challenged. I like to work hard. I don't want to be told to chill out. Okay, great. So here's the message. Yes, it's harder now. So just work smarter and keep doing it, because it's worth it and it's good and it'll make you feel
Mm-hmm.
good. And it's so good for your health and your life. And the other point that I wanted to make, when you said the idea of like keeping the schedule or the momentum or whatever, it's better when you have reasons other than aesthetics, or it's easier when you have reasons other than aesthetics, is so true. And I have said this before, people don't get it until they do. That, like, because everybody has an aesthetic goal, we think that that's enough to make us change our behavior. And I mean, you can just look around at culture and life and know that that's not the case. It seems counterintuitive, because again, I'm speaking very generally, but like in women and fitness culture, everybody wants to lose a couple pounds, or everybody wants to get toned, or everybody wants to look better in a bathing suit. So you think we all have this burning desire, and that's what we keep saying is what is our reason for eating less or changing our diet or going for more walks or whatever. But it has proven time and time again that it is a really, really bad motivator for any kind of long lasting change. And that's one of the other things that I'm grappling with before, when I was younger and I didn't have any other really responsibilities. And I was like entering these bodybuilding competitions and I was trying to like make my way in this industry. Looking good was a pretty big motivator. And it kind of worked when I really had a lot of energy and not a lot of places I needed to direct it. But now that that's the opposite, and also again, with just getting older and not really caring so much about like being hot or having abs or whatever, I've kind of tried to tell myself, I had this little narrative after I had Magnus where I was like, well, I want to, I don't want to use having a kid as an excuse to not feel good and look good and feel good in my body. So I want to get back and I want to look good in a bathing suit and I want to lose any of the baby weight and all that stuff. And none of those aesthetic desires were enough to keep me on any kind of track whatsoever. It was 100%. I want to make sure that I'm like healthy and that my pelvic floor is working and that I can feed this kid and that I don't, because a lot of postpartum sort of mental health issues can also have a nutritional or deficiency component too. So all of those things, it was all like health related. And even now to this point, I was like, I'm turning 40. Maybe I could have some goal and try to like look the best I've ever looked at 40. I'm like, that didn't happen. because I didn't care enough. I didn't care
Right.
enough. It was this nice
Right.
thought, that I'm like, oh, wouldn't that be fun to just get like super fit at 40 and like show how good I can look at 40? And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care enough. Like, I just don't. So, and
Yeah.
like you said, maybe that will come back and maybe that will be a thing. But I think the more that people understand that two things can exist, it can be absolutely okay and fine and very human of you to want to lose a couple pounds and look good. We all, on some level, want to look our best, but it is not enough to have a sustaining, lifelong, healthy practice. There have to be other reasons. And it should be, I think, around trying to be your healthiest, happiest self so you can show up in the best way possible for yourself and for the people around you and the things that you want to do in life. And the great bonus is that usually the looking better thing comes around as a result of that.
Right. I think everything you're saying is 100% true. And I think we have to remember that looking great at 40 and looking great at 50 or however old is going to be different from looking great at 25. And it's perfectly fine to have aesthetic goals. Like you said, we all have them. But let's make sure that those aesthetic goals are goals for you and not, it sort of breaks my heart, the idea of like, I want to get back to how I looked when I was, fill in the blank, because you don't go back, you go forward. And, I think it's very true in the sort of postpartum world when it's like, get your body back. And it's like, you never get your body back. I mean, I'm fitter than I was before I was pregnant, but it's a different body. And I think this idea of getting it back it does us all a terrible disservice.
Yeah.
So I think that's another thing, is that we all have to learn how to, and I don't mean to sound like I've mastered it, because I certainly haven't, but we all have to learn how to be working on this body and not the body of the past. Which doesn't mean you can't look amazing, however old you are. I mean, again, look at Train with Joan; she looks incredible. But there is such a pervasive youth culture. I know that's like, obvious to everybody. So we have to all sort of be careful not to, as people who are aging, we have to be careful not to fall into the trap of trying to look like some beautiful fitness influencer who's, 22, because that's not happening. And there's no reason why it should happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
was going to say, if like a genie could be like, you could look, I could take you back to whenever in your 20s or 30s that you looked the best, but you also had to like go back to that time and like live that time again, or like with that brain, I'd be like, nah, I'm good. I'm good. I'll keep the
absolutely.
current situation anyway.
Absolutely. But you said something earlier, and I didn't want to forget to sort of go back to it, which is this idea that even if you're not in this stage of life, that it's a good idea to listen to this. So I would say to those of us who are in this stage of life, we all have friends or kids or nieces and nephews or people in our life who are at that age. And I'm not trying to sell this podcast, but I'm just encouraging you to share it with them, because I really wish I had some of this knowledge when I was in my 20s. I feel like it would have made all the difference. So let's be sure to, share what we are lucky enough to know with our, younger cohorts. And the other thing I wanted to say is that, we talk about having aesthetic goals and losing a few pounds and all of that. I'm a mother to a teenage daughter. And so I am very hyper focused on not giving her a complex about her looks and about her body, and the role that her body plays in, like, what kind of currency her body is in the world. And that her body belongs to her and is for her enjoyment, and and it doesn't mean she can't share it, but it's like, all of these things. So, and doing what she does for her own sake. And she is a kid who super into fashion and makeup, and she looks great. She's a beautiful girl. She takes great pride in her appearance, and she likes all of that, and I like that for her. It's great to see. But I feel like I really watch myself around the way I talk about The way I talk about my body, we don't talk about other people's bodies, about like people being heavy or not heavy or in bigger bodies. Like we just don't go there,
Mhm.
um, unless she brings it up. But generally in our family, it's just not, it's like a value that we don't sort of like observe, or make observations about people's appearance in that way.
Mhm.
Just because I grew up, when I was growing up, it was like all everybody talked about. My mom was always on, and my mom was a great mom, but like she was always on a diet. She was always, trying to get thinner. And that was a big topic of conversation. So
Mhm.
um, I would just, sort of a roundabout way of saying it, but it's like as we're in this stage and we're thinking about our aesthetic goals, which are fine to have, that we kind of watch how we communicate about it with our kids, especially our
Mhm.
teenage girls and pre-teenage girls, because
Mhm.
as you know, they're up against quite a lot in the age of social media, and filters and all of that. So that
If
is
we could,
something.
yeah. Yeah. If we could just think about like trying to talk about ourselves and even just the broader community the way we would want people to like treat our children, like the internet
Yeah.
is such social media is such a gross place, and I think that algorithms are changing. I don't know, but it's like almost like social media is just set up to bring out the worst in people and to allow people to be nasty. And I see the way it's almost, again, the attention economy is so insidious that people will post things knowing they'll get a lot of hate because it sends people to their algorithm. It's like so gross.
Hmm.
But it's such a like scary, miserable, potentially place. And that's how so many people communicate now. It's like if we just thought more about, it's like, and it's so cliche, but like everybody out there is like somebody's kid and we have kids and we have parents, and people don't want people to be just miserable and mean and judgmental about
Hmm.
how we feel about ourselves and our bodies. And it's like, let's just judge less, even to the point of like judging people because they maybe eat a different way than we do, or going back to my Pilates hate. If somebody wants to do Pilates, I love that for you. If you like it and it helps you, like, I don't want to put more negativity out into the world. There's so much already. If we
Yeah.
can
But
just,
we do it with ourselves too, is I guess what
exactly.
I was not articulating well is like I'll give you an example. So my kid's really into vintage clothes, as you know.
Yes.
And so we go to we go to thrift stores all the time. And she always wants me to try stuff on. And so and she tries stuff on. And I have, I'm bigger now than I used to be because I work out more and I have more muscle. Um, and it's taken me a long time and I still struggle a little bit, because I was always like size two, and growing up when I grew up, like that was the thing, to be skinny. And I'm not anymore. I'm bigger. I have bigger shoulders. I have a bigger back. Like I just don't fit into those tiny clothes anymore. Um, and it's hard for me, but I have to really, when I'm shopping with her and I'm in a dressing room or I come out and I'm wearing something and I feel like it doesn't work on me, I have to really catch myself not to be like,
I feel
oh,
huge in this or whatever.
yeah, I'll be like,
Mhm.
and I'll say like, oh, I the muscles in my back, I look too wide because I have all these muscles in my back. Like I have to be careful and really edit myself because the first thing that would come out of my mouth is like, oh, I look too big in this, or I look,
Mhm.
and it's like, no, I really don't want that message to get to her. I want her to know that I like my muscles. And, yeah, I struggle with not being, fitting into teeny tiny clothes anymore, but like it's for a good reason. And that I don't hate my body. I love my body. I want her to get that message. And it's not easy because it goes against all of our programming. I think we're all programmed to hate the way we look and to, it's fine to have goals, but I want those goals to be from a place of love, like love your body, I mean, it sounds so corny, but like instead of like, oh, I need to lose weight because I have this and I have that, it's like, I want to, build more muscle because it will help me be stronger. And, I'll have these great lines in my swimsuit and all of that. So it can be partially aesthetic and partially, health, but just coming from a place of positivity and, feeling good about yourself. I mean, for yourself, and also for whoever's watching, because if you have kids that are watching and they're listening.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, we're going to have another episode where we're talking about maybe kids and maybe pregnancy in, I don't know, I don't like this term, but older, pregnancies, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and raising kids in older decades and stuff. So I am excited to have that conversation, because you and I have had some great conversations offline about this very thing and how we talk about ourselves in front of our kids, how we talk about our kids, and so many of the double standards that exist there. And I think the fact that you have a girl and I have a boy will make for some good conversations too, because even like excuse me, a tiny example of, my boy is on the taller side because his dad is on the taller side. He didn't get that from me. Although my family's actually kind of tall. I just ended up not being very tall. But we'll joke and we'll talk about what a big boy he is. He's huge and he's giant and he's growing out of these clothes. And I'm not being overly sort of anal or picky about this stuff, but like, would we talk that way if he was a girl? If he was a tall, bigger than average girl, would we say, geez, you're just huge, you're growing out of these clothes, you're so big? I probably wouldn't, because I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm very aware of how that could damage a girl, how that isn't something girls want to hear. But for boys, it's fine because boys want to be big. Boys should be big. Boys are, and is that even damaging because he's going to think he's got to be big? What if he isn't? All of these things, like it's just about thinking about it, right? Like it's all about being thoughtful and maybe trying to unpack your own either biases or unconscious sort of choices or whatever. But something like that, something as innocuous as like, you're just such a big boy and you're growing out of these clothes. And, like, would I say that if he was a tall girl growing out of her clothes quickly? It's really interesting. I'm excited for that episode. We'll have that one coming up pretty soon, but I want to end, and I think we're going to try to keep these episodes at around an hour. Maybe, I don't know if we get some feedback. Maybe we won't get the feedback because we'll be putting these all out at once. But anyway, try to stick to around an hour, because we could talk forever. But I like to end. I think we should try to end every episode. And I don't think this was too much of a bummer, but I think we should try to end it on like definite positive notes and like maybe some actionable notes. And I think some of the positive stuff that we can talk about when we talk about aging and fitness is that, as much as we have talked about kind of crappy aspects of culture and this obsession with youth and looking young and being young and all that stuff, we do still live in a time where there is less cultural restraint on being who you want to be as you get older. And we know more about health. We know more about how to take care of ourselves. There are more visible older women crushing it, maybe, than there have been in previous generations. And you referenced Joan, who's amazing. Like, another person that I really like to follow is Steph Gaudreau, who's in her mid 40s, and she's very much talking about, intelligent, awesome, challenging fitness in your 40s and how to fuel for that properly and all that stuff. And she's awesome. She's strong and she's just so cool. So she's another great person. I'm sure we could think of a ton of examples, but there are lots of examples. And there is, I think, more, if you are willing to access it, potential for just not having to follow whatever these outdated rules of what you should be doing in your 40s and 50s and 60s, or what you should look like, or how you should behave as an older person, or how you should consider yourself as an older person. I think there's more potential for you to just throw that stuff out the window or into a fireplace if you want to, and say, I'm going to do what I want to do and look the way I want to look and feel the way I want to feel and work out the way I want to work out. So that's a positive thing, right? Like, I think that makes me feel good. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what you said before is true, that you do sort of tend to give less of a shit what people think the older you get. And that helps,
Yeah.
because I kind of feel like, you don't like it, don't watch.
Yeah.
You
And,
know?
and so much of it, I mean, again, if you take yourself offline where people who don't know you can be really nasty to you for no reason, but if you take yourself back into the real world, it goes back to what I was saying about in the gym, where like so much of your fear or worry about whatever other people are thinking is your perception. It's not actually theirs, because most people are more worried
Mm-hmm.
about themselves than they are about you. So if
Mm-hmm.
you, when you can shed that and be like, I was talking to my girlfriend the other day about, we were like trying on clothes or trying on like workout pants or whatever. And she was saying something about, I feel uncomfortable about like the cellulite. You can kind of see it or whatever. And I'm like, and I have cellulite. Everybody has cellulite. I have cellulite.
Everybody has cellulite.
And I don't know where I heard this. This isn't my original quote, but I really like it. It was somebody with regards to like their gym outfit or their like cellulite on their bum that maybe people could see or whatever. And they were like, whatever's going on behind me is not my business. You know what I mean? It's like, if somebody wants to look at my butt while I'm working out and they notice some cellulite, that has nothing to do with, that is not my business. And
Yeah.
it's really freeing to be like, first of all, no one really probably is looking or cares. And if they do, that also doesn't matter. It doesn't impact you. And people aren't going to, unlike Instagram and TikTok, people aren't going to come up to you in the gym and be like, hey, I noticed that I don't really like what you're wearing to the gym. And I'm going to like tell you what a dummy you are. Like that stuff doesn't happen. People are just dealing with their own stuff. So, just care less about what other people think is their business. It's not your problem. It's not, you don't have to worry about it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Whatever's going on
Amen.
behind me is, if I haven't brushed my hair and the back of my head looks like a rat's nest, that's not my business. That's whoever's behind me looking at it. That's their business. It's
Well,
really free.
I mean, it's funny, but it's also serious. Like other people's judgment is just not your problem. It just isn't. And there's nothing you can do about it anyway. So, or you could spend your life trying to shoehorn yourself into somebody else's view of what you or your life should be. And like, what's the point? That's such a waste. So yeah, make yourself happy, and other people can, screw them if they can't take a joke.
There you go. I think that's a great place to end. I love it. I think again, this series is a work in progress that I'm really happy and excited that we're doing, but it's based on our planning. This is a series that has a beginning and an end, and that is all going to be sort of created at once and then dripped out through the podcast. But that doesn't mean that people who are listening can't respond and tell us what they think. So we'd love to get any feedback if there is more that you want to hear, or you have questions about anything we've talked about, or if you want us to talk about other things, you can let us know that, because it doesn't mean that we aren't going to do more of this. It just, we want to hear what resonates with you, what's important to you, because we want to do stuff that helps other people and helps you feel kind of connected. So you can reach out. We have a dedicated email. It's musclescience4women, the number 4 @gmail.com. And you can send any questions, comments, feedback there. As always, we would love for you to share the podcast with people that, you think could benefit. If you want to reach out to either of us individually, we're both on Instagram, right? I'm at the Muscle Maven, and you are
at Cookie Pie 0402.
Or you can check out Beth's website, bethlipton.com. We'll put all this stuff in the show notes so you can, check us out, say hi, give feedback anywhere you want to. But yeah, we've got lots more coming. We're going to talk about kids. We're going to talk about hormones. We're going to talk about nutrition. We're going to talk about just sort of fitness culture and sort of the aesthetic side of things. We've got a couple other things up our sleeves, so stick around, and it's going to continue to be sassy.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you, Ashleigh. And thank you, listeners, because I know sometimes it's jarring when you have like a new person on your podcast that you're used to being a certain way. So thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. I feel like our listeners are going to be into it because of obviously the demographic, but also the podcast got so much better when Rachel came on board. Like I was so burnt out, and people were probably tired of me too. And I was like, you know what? We need some fresh blood here. And it's been so much fun just being like conversational with Rachel. And the best thing is when you have another partner, a co-host, they're always going to bring different experiences and different sort of feelings about stuff and different stories and everything. So it always makes it better. So yeah, I'm very happy that you decided to do this with me. And I think it's going to be really fun. So that's it. Until next time, guys.